Looking right around Huntley. He reaches. Oh, that ball's out. That's live. Back the other way. Sam Hubbard. The Cincinnati Kid. Hubbard's got a convoy. Chased by Andrews. At the 30. The 20. He will score.
To the end zone. Down the field. And it is deflected. And gone. Touchdown. A.J. Green.
Goes back to throw. Men are coming late. Looks right down the middle. There's Eddie Brown. He has it at the 35 to the 30. He may go 10-5. Touchdown.
Now the Bengals Super Bowl chances rest on his right foot. The kick is up. It is good.
Corey Dillon. He's gone. The knockout punch. You're looking at it. 65 yards.
And then back to throw as the blitz is on. Goes long, intended for Collinsworth. He has it down to the 20. Touchdown. And Chris Collinsworth.
Throwing the long ball. Deep down the field. Chad Johnson's got it. Touchdown. Cincinnati.
Look at Chase go. Oh my goodness, what a gear he just found. Chase for the touchdown. Wow, Chase is on the case.
It is no fluke. It is a fact. The Cincinnati Bengals are headed to Super Bowl 56. The play clock at 3. Shotgun snap. Carr throws into traffic. Intercepted. Jermaine Pratt has the football.
Yeah.
Coffin nails.
Bam, bam, bam. How about that?
Chatterbox Bengals back in action with my main man, Craig Sandlin. He left us for 2 days and everything went to crap. But we're back on Tuesday. Here we are. Bengals fell on Sunday Night Football, 34-27, in an absolute thriller in Los Angeles to the Chargers. And we're here to recap it. As always, 4-7 now on the season, and the playoff hopes are about as far as they could be. Craig, you weren't here with us on Sunday night, so I'll give you a chance to get some thoughts off your chest before we dive into the key plays, if you'd like.
Yeah, had a nice little trip to San Diego with my wife. So, you know, despite the negative outcome on Sunday, I was in a generally good mood on over the weekend. You know, I left and went on vacation with hope, and I come back and I reiterate the words of Elliot Rearing, our friend, that he spoke about the Cincinnati Reds season just a few short months ago. The 2024 Cincinnati Bengals season is over. And, you know, it's disappointing for sure, but that's just where I'm at, Jacob. I'm sure we're going to dive more into it by the end of the show, and we'll talk about just how over the season really is, or if it really is in your eyes, I guess. Sounds like maybe you're still clinging on to hope, but nonetheless, excited to be back, happy to be back with all of the Chatterbox fam. And I don't think I guess we technically have it on the rundown, but some breaking news in the last hour or so, Jacob.
Right.
I don't know if you saw or not.
Right. Yeah, we should just start
we'll
with
get
that.
into as well, but we should probably just start there. Is that the Bengals have claimed cornerback Marco Wilson off of the New England Patriots practice. Well, actually off waivers, technically, right? Appeared in 10 games this year. Some interesting GIFs. I don't know if you're a GIF or a GIF guy, but some interesting GIFs of Marco Wilson over the years, for sure. Look, I think we were going to get into it anyway. DJ Turner onto the IR at this point. So the Bengals go out and get Marco Wilson. They obviously have had conversations, it sounds like. Xavier Howard came to the building last week, left without a deal. Cornerback we knew was an area of need, and injury over the weekend made it even more of a need. And so the Bengals go out and get Marco Wilson. Jacob, what's your takeaway you're probably more familiar with Marco than most.
Yeah. I mean, he's fine. He's a player whose name I recognize, and at this point in the season, if you need DB help and you get a player who was playing decently high-level SEC football before he decided to throw a shoe just a few years ago, then that's something that could maybe help this team. The Bengals secondary we knew was going to be an issue coming into the season, and you've now lost two of your better corners to season-ending injuries. DJ Turner really coming into his own on Sunday night, comes down on a PBU and breaks his clavicle. Earlier in the year, just when he was starting to find his stride at the new position, Dax Hill tore his ACL. The Bengals haven't been able to catch a break all year. We've talked about the bad luck in the games, but that's transpired in injuries as well. It's just another thing for the Bengals. And of course it happens when DJ Turner's finally having like the breakout game of his career. He gets put in for Cam Taylor-Britt. He makes a couple insane highlight plays. He gets hurt on an insane highlight play, full extension PBU. And it's just really a perfect microcosm of this Bengals season so far. You finally think you found something, and then it's taken right out from under you. And now Marco Wilson, it's going to be a change of feelings for me rooting for him, but it is what it is. I guess he's a Bengal now. I'll hop on the train and be a Marco Wilson guy. No throwing shoes here. That's got to be the first thing Lou Anarumo tells him. No throwing shoes here. And make sure you're nice to Andy Dalton. He's a Bengals legend, and he's in the background of the worst Andy Dalton gif of all time as well.
Well, it depends on how you look at it, whether it's the worst or the best. But yeah, I think you take a look at the two GIFs, and one, no throwing shoes, but two, feel free to go pick six anytime you want, my friend. So if we can recreate one of those GIFs and not the other, we'll be in a good place. For those of you that haven't seen it, our friend Jay Morrison did tweet both of those out within the last hour or so. Feel free to go check those out and see what we're talking about if you don't remember them off the top of your head. But look, I mean, at the end of the day, the Bengals did have some bright spots as it pertained to cornerback this past weekend. You mentioned DJ Turner, but he wasn't the only bright spot, Jacob, as it pertains to the DB room. So Fig Newton, Josh Newton, formerly, also came in after Cam Taylor-Britt was benched. We're going to get into that a little bit more with the key plays, so I don't want to go too much into it. But look, I mean, if you're going to have two of your better corners go down, it's nice to know that you at least have somebody ready to step in a little bit. I'm not sure that Fig is ready to be an every down guy, but he certainly looked good enough on Sunday to fit into this roster. Absolutely.
And we continue to see when these young guys in this draft class, especially the 2024 Bengals draft class, get an opportunity to get more run in this system, they're playing really well. Every single guy that continues to get opportunities, really, other with the exception of Jermaine Burton, out of this most recent draft class, continues to shine. And whether that's in the preseason with Matt Lee or now with Eric All before he was hurt, Josh Newton last night, even Amarius Mims, I know there's been some growing pains, but these guys have shown flashes of being really, really good pieces for this team in the long term. And as we've talked about with this Bengals team struggling this year and the keys to fixing it for the future, we've talked about the draft and how that's exactly how we're going to get out of this talent hole that we seem to be in right now, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And it seems like the 2024 draft is trending in the direction for being maybe year one of this defensive rebuild. Chris Jenkins has shown some really good signs. If Josh Newton can build off of what we saw Sunday night, that would be phenomenal. Obviously, we'd like a little bit more out of McKinley Jackson. And if you go back to the year prior, Miles Murphy on the defensive line. But to see this kind of production out of late round picks fairly early in their career, even if it is just a small flash, it's great to see for the Bengals because we haven't seen this much in the last few years, especially under Zach Taylor. We've talked about it on this show before. Just 9 out of the 41 picks before this year's draft class considered hits, at least in our assumption of the term. And that's just not going to cut it, especially now that you have a $55 million quarterback. You're not going to keep being able to go to free agency to try to fill those holes. That's what the Bengals have done really the entire Joe Burrow tenure here. They've gone to free agency to address their biggest needs. Well, you're going to have to start doing it in the draft, especially if you sign Jamar Chase and you have even more of that cap eaten up just by a few of those star players. And to see some of those young guys thriving early, it's a great sign for the way this defense is headed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we're talking about a team where they have draft highlights in the realm of Jackson Carman and Billy Price and Tyler Shelvin and Michael Jordan, and the list goes on and on and on. Guys who are no longer in the NFL or certainly no longer on the Bengals. And look, at some point they're going to have to start hitting in the draft. I mean, I think there's way too many holes on this team to expect them to address it in free agency, at least near term, right? I mean,
Right.
I don't think there's any question that there's going to be some guys added to this roster in free agency over the next couple seasons. But to expect them to fill all of the holes, I just don't think that's realistic. And, we've all seen the tweet by now that kind of spells out all the different needs that this Bengals team have. And when you really look at it, you take away quarterback and you take away wide receiver 1, and just about every other position is a need at this point. So Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor have their work cut out for them. But let's get into Sunday night's game.
Yes.
And let's take a look at some of the key plays.
We'll start with that
27 loss.
We'll start with that DB room since we're talking about it here, and the play that led to the emergence of Josh Newton and DJ Turner on Sunday night, and it's a blown coverage by Cam Taylor-Britt, something we've led this show off with far, far too many times this season. Here you just see simple crossers by the Chargers and an inability by Cam Taylor-Britt to do his job. DJ Turner passes off his route. Cam Taylor-Britt follows his across the top of the formation, leaving Quentin Johnson wide open at the 10-yard line, running into the end zone. You're asking Logan Wilson to do far too much to try to speed up and catch up a 5-yard gap there and fill that hole if you're Cam Taylor-Britt. Completely unacceptable, and no one to blame here other than 29. Just blatant blown coverage, and something that we've seen happen way too many times this year. When we talk about the Bengals and the holes, more holes continue to present themselves. We thought corner 1 was taken care of with Cam Taylor-Britt, and he continues to do things like this 11 weeks into the season. We've seen it more often than not.
I mean, it's a zone coverage. It's the most basic of basic concepts here. And for Cam Taylor-Britt especially, like, all you have to do is fall back deep.
Exactly.
He should never cross the hash marks on this play. And I don't know if it's just mental lapses where he forgets what play they're in or what defense they're in, or if it's legitimately like he's just not smart enough to understand professional defenses. But this is not a difficult concept, especially for someone in the NFL. And for him to be all the way past midfield following Quentin Johnson, it just doesn't make any sense. And these brain farts continue to happen over and over again. And when they continue to happen, that's just not being dialed in. And, to lose credit, we talk a lot about accountability and how this culture may or may not lean itself towards accountability. The one thing I'll say is that they've held Cam Taylor-Britt accountable.
They absolutely
Now, the problem
have.
is that there's been way too many plays for Cam Taylor-Britt to be held accountable for, which has been the real challenge. I mean, it shows the minute that Josh Newton or that Fig Newton came in, how quickly this defense turned things around. And obviously the frustration at the end of the game with giving up the touchdown towards the end. But if you look at really I don't know, what was it? It was 25 minutes in between the scores. A lot of it came down to just shutting down that passing game that Justin Herbert started that game so hot. And unfortunately, a big part of it was that pickup right there where just CTB just brain farting and not paying attention to what the call was.
Herbert started the game. It was either 6 for 6 or 7 for 7 or something along those lines. It was an unbelievable start to the game, just absolutely torching this Bengals secondary. There was a point in this third quarter where he broke his career high for consecutive incompletions. This Bengals secondary had 8 straight incompletions against Justin Herbert, and it wasn't all the Bengals secondary. There were some missed throws, some drops by the Chargers offense, but still, guys were in the right spots more often than not and forced those plays to go awry. That's not something we've seen with Cam Taylor-Britt in this year. He has been the worst corner in the NFL. He's allowed the most yards and the most touchdowns. I don't know what other metric to use to try to explain how bad he's been. He has been absolutely terrible, and it's a guy that was no doubt across the board believed to be the second best player on this defense coming into the year. It's insane how far he's fallen off, and it's giving this front office many, many more challenges going into an offseason where you already knew you'd have a lot on your plate. We thought stripes, even when we thought we were a Super Bowl contender. Now you know that there's 18 of the 22 positions or so that are a problem that you're going to have to fix going into next year. And some of the guys that you thought were even if you didn't think they were all pro talents, some guys you thought were at least locked in starters are not playing anywhere near that level. Your two biggest free agency signings are going to have to be cap casualties because they both absolutely stink. I don't know what else to do with this team. The regression with the players you expected to believe in has been absolutely terrible. But here we are again talking about another guy who has had crazy regression this year. It's Sam Hubbard. Sam Hubbard coming across the field here on a play where Chris Jenkins gets through the line and gets hands on J.K. Dobbins. Hubbard then pushes the guard into Jenkins, knocking him off the block. If 94 simply joins in on that tackle, Dobbins goes down for a loss of yards, no more 15-yard gain. We're having a completely different conversation. Unbelievable play by Sam Hubbard, and I'm not talking about in a good way. How does that happen, Craig?
Well, I mean, there's so many pieces to this. First of all, Chris Jenkins has to wrap up. He's got to finish that tackle. But you know, you've got a guy who, Sam Hubbard, if you look at that screenshot right there, you've got 4 or 5 Bengals all surrounding J.K. Dobbins. And I know we love to circle in on Sam Hubbard at this point because it just seems like it's so easy. And he comes in and he pushes the guard off of Chris Jenkins and pushes them out of the way. And J.K. Dobbins then has a route to immediately cut it back. But you look at this entire play, I mean, I can't tell who that is. Is that Trey behind there as well, who's right there?
Yep.
And basically J.K. Dobbins just skirts between them. And I mean, we've talked about tackling being an issue for this team all season long, but it's not just one-on-one tackling, it's gang tackling. And
Absolutely.
One of the things that kept coming to my mind on Sunday night is that when I watch good defenses, one of the things that you always hear commentators talk about is how they swarm to the ball. They all swarm to the ball, and every time there's a tackle, there's 5, 6, 7 guys around the ball carrier. That never happens with this Bengals team. It always feels like it's 1 or 2 guys making a play in the open field, and it's never a swarm of guys coming up and combining to make a tackle. And this is exactly that case. You think that you've got a swarm and you've got 5 guys surrounding your and then he just squirts away because they haven't finished the play. And finishing the play all year long has been an issue, and it's something that we're starting to hear about as well in the media. I mean, it just over and over again, this team just continues to fail to finish. And whether it's the fact that they have 4 games where they've had 65% winning odds or better in the last 6 minutes of the game, or it's tackling like that, they just fail to finish. I don't know if you saw that tweet out Absolutely. That came out today. 4 different times this year, the Bengals had a 65% or better chance of winning with less than 6 minutes left in the game. And on all 4 of them, they lost. That was the Chiefs game where they had a 72.2% win probability before the Chiefs came back and won.
Yep.
The Baltimore game, the first Baltimore game, where they had an 86% chance of winning. The second Baltimore game, 65.6%. And then the Chargers game, 71.7% chance of winning. And all 4 of them end up being losses. And it's the difference between being 4-7 and 8-3. And exactly like that play, it's all about finishing. And it just feels like this team is not in the position to finish time and time again. And whether we want to admit it or not, I continue to go back to coaching those scenarios. The Bengals haven't been good enough to put those games away on offense when it matters, and they haven't been good enough on defense to get the stops when it matters either.
You want to know just how unlikely these Bengals losses are? I mean, you're talking about the winning percentage there. Joe Burrow on Sunday night became the first QB in the history of the NFL to throw for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 picks in back-to-back games and go 0-2. It just doesn't happen, what's happening to the Bengals this year. Whenever people put up the numbers that our stars are putting up, it immediately equates to wins. I know it's a team game, but we've never seen a quarterback do what Joe Burrow is doing in his career and lose. And we keep losing, and it's because of things like this. It's because of purely fundamental mistakes on the defensive side of the football that allows opposing offenses to move down the field like a hot knife through butter. It's incredible that this defense was able to get us back in this game. They held the Chargers down for as long as they did, which looking back on it is absolutely shocking because outside of that stretch in the middle, when the Chargers needed to score at the end, they got right down the field and got a touchdown instead of a field goal. And in the first half, they moved it as easily as any team has all year. So it's incredibly frustrating to see, and there's nothing else to do but blame the defense. And I hear people continually say, all right, what else? What else? We blame the defense every week. What else do we do? What else is there to do? When you keep scoring 25, 30 points a game and losing, it doesn't happen to anyone else in the league. You have to be able to win these games. And when you lose 27-34, I know the offense had opportunities at the end. I know Joe Burrow didn't get Evan McPherson closer field goals. I know he missed Jamar Chase on a route down the sideline at the end of the game. He scored 27 points on the road in prime time. He scored 21 unanswered in the second half against the league's top defense. The defense didn't do enough. There's no one else to blame. I know you can read deeper into it, but that's just the reality of the situation here. And it's probably going to be the same thing at least once or twice more this season.
3,028 passing yards, 27 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Only 4 quarterbacks in the history of the NFL have done that through their first 11 games outside of Joe Burrow. Tom Brady did it twice. Aaron Rodgers did it twice. Pat Mahomes, Drew Brees. The records of those teams, Jacob, 16-0, 13-3, 15-1, 13-3, 14-2, 13-3, and then the Bengals at 4-7. It just is historically bad what is happening to this team. And I legitimately don't know what the answer is. And I feel bad because, you know, we put on this show with the expectation of being able to talk about answers and talk about what needs to change. And like, look, we can sit here and say, oh, well, Lou's got to go or Zach's got to go. He's lost the locker room or whatever it may be. But the truth of the matter is that regardless of who you put in charge, the players still have to execute. And when you have Cam Taylor-Britt who can't execute a simple 3-deep man or 3-deep zone coverage, I don't know if it matters who you put in there as a defensive coordinator because it's just going to be the same problems over and over again. You know, I don't know if you want to get into this now or not. The quotes and the media availability from this team after this game, even Zach Taylor today, like this team has lost any hope at this point anyway. Yeah. So even for you who want to text me and say, don't let us beat the Steelers, like the team doesn't even believe in themselves anymore. They're done. Jamar Chase trying to call out Zach Taylor in the media post game. I already had my say about Jamar Chase and his leadership abilities a couple of weeks ago, so we don't need to get into that again. But it's just so disheartening, and you know the question continues to be asked, and rightfully so. I don't think there's any chance of it happening, but rightfully so. Does Joe Burrow finish out his contract in Cincinnati? Does he request a trade? Does he re-sign afterwards? Do we sign Jamar Chase? Do we sign T. Higgins? Do we sign Trey Hendrickson? Like, if you're Trey Hendrickson, why would you come back? Like, you're literally the only player on this defense who's shown any ability. And now offenses are keying in on you, which is reducing your output, obviously.
Yeah.
You're still obviously showing plenty on tape, but like, I mean, why would he come back? He already threatened to retire last offseason. I mean, what at this point can we realistically believe that he's going to be back? I mean, this is his last year of his contract. I don't believe he'll be back. I think we're probably resigned to the fact that T. Higgins is gone. Obviously, Jamar Chase is under contract for one more year, but what is that going to look like with the contract? Is he going to hold in again? Is he going to hold out? Is he going to hold out for longer than he did this year? Will the Bengals pay him? I just don't know. And like, as you continue to look at where do you find solutions, every solution has to be centered around the draft. And then you turn to Duke Tobin and you're like, oh, look, you've got a great track record in the draft. I have so much confidence in you to make this happen. Frustrating to say the least.
That's right. Every page I turn to try to fix the team or find a path to resurrect, not even just this season, but I want to say this core, because it feels like Sunday night was kind of the slamming shut of the 2021 Super Bowl window, whole experience, Zach Taylor, honeymoon phase, everything. That's completely over if it wasn't yet. The Bengals now have to open another window. And I do still agree with Joe 100%. And it's the question that I asked Jay Morrison this morning on Off the Bench. I said, the window's open his whole career. Joe told us that. I still believe it. The first window's closed. They now have to rebuild on the fly and open a second window to try to compete again. We've seen teams do it. The Chiefs did it. They won a Super Bowl with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and that core. They tore it down. They traded their star all-pro weapon. They built it back up, and they've won 2 more. We've seen the Bills do it. It didn't result in a Super Bowl, but they got to an AFC championship with Stephon Diggs, those safeties, that defense. They tore it down. They now have rookie wide receivers, young guys, cheap options around Josh Allen. They're 8-2. Teams are able to rebuild on the fly and remain competitors in very small windows. Those teams hit in the draft. Those teams swing big money in free agency. Those teams trade at the deadline and fill the holes they didn't know they had in the offseason when it comes to the middle of the season and you're trying to make a push. The Bengals are going to have to change the way they operate in order to fix these problems, and I think that's why we have such a hard time trying to fix them ourselves, because we try to operate within the parameters that as fans we've been operating under for the last 25, 30 years, honestly much longer than that. And you can't fix a team with a $55 million quarterback operating the way the Bengals have. You can fix them to the chance that maybe you catch lightning in a bottle, go 10-7, win the AFC North, and go to the Super Bowl. You can't fix them to the point where you're a 13-4 number 1 seed perennial contender year in and year out, just bludgeoning teams like we continue to see the dominant teams in the league do that the Bengals have really never done. Even when they're winning close games. And it all comes back to the defense, and it's not even just the defense. We've seen in games against poor offenses when the defense has sharpened up, the games have been close for the Bengals even when the defense has allowed 10 points. 17-10 win over the Giants. Just unbelievable that this team has been yet to come together and figure anything out. And I think that's the biggest problem when it comes to the coaching conversation is people want Zach Taylor out because they don't know who else to blame about those kind of issues. The locker room issues, the team not gelling, the team starting slow every year. And I think that's when we get to the big picture where you realize this is a foundational problem in this organization. And you can have as many MVP seasons out of Joe Burrow, triple crowns out of Jamar Chase, record-breaking sack seasons out of Trey Hendrickson as you want. If you're going to continue to play with one arm tied behind your back in the front office, you're not going to win a lot of games. And that's where the Bengals are at right now. And I don't know what else they can do to fix it other than overhaul that front office, because you have a guy doing stuff like what I'm about to play here. Joe Burrow scrambling and finding Chase Brown with unbelievable pressure by Derwin James, making a play to lead the Bengals down the field and tie a game in which they were down 21. And you don't have the other 21 starters around him to generate you a win in a game where he put up unbelievable numbers. This play right here is a perfect encapsulation of what Joe Burrow has done this year. All-pro safety Derwin James comes untouched off the edge. Drew Sample got a hand on him, didn't really affect it. Joe Burrow squeezes right out of there and finds Chase Brown, who then makes another great play. Hand up around the face mask, obviously not called a hit to the helmet, but what's new with the Bengals? Finds Chase Brown in a very tight window, makes one man miss on the sideline, gets an extra 5 yards. Just an unbelievable play from Joe Burrow, something we've seen him do more this year than ever in his career, and something I texted Craig right away and said, hey, we need this play because I got to play at least one of Joe every week if he's going to keep doing this stuff, because I remember watching this one live on Sunday night and just saying, wow, this is the guy quarterbacking our team. And for a moment, I was all the way in. Because if you have a guy at the helm doing stuff like this, you always have a chance. And then the defense gave it away. But just an unbelievable play by Joe Burrow at a point where this team absolutely needed it.
I mean, an unbelievable play, but how many times are we going to leave a tight end all alone on a blitzer or on an edge? Like, I mean, we talked about that tweet from Big Willie last week. I mean, how many times are we going to let unblocked rushers get to Joe Burrow? And I mean, he made at least 4 or 5 similar plays this past weekend, but like trusting Drew Sample to get out there and make that block on Derwin James like this goes back to the question of like Joe Burrow and how much can you really have faith that he wants to spend the rest of his career here when things like this keep happening.
Right.
And so, yeah, great play. And he deserves all the credit in the world for making it. And, tip your cap to Chase Brown as well for reading the scramble and being where he needed to be and all of those things. But the truth of the matter is that this Bengals offensive line continues to be terrible, period. Like, not even just against the not just against the run, not just against the pass, but just in general. You've got two of the worst guards in the NFL. And I realize that the guards didn't have anything to do on that play specifically, but at some point you have to protect your quarterback and you have to protect your lead asset. And right now they are not protecting the lead asset outside of Ted Karras, who's about the only Bengal who's carrying his weight right now. But when Ted Karras is surrounded by two guys with a PFF pass block grade of 37.5 and 32.9, how much can you really expect from him?
Exactly.
So I think ultimately, as I've continued to spend more and more time thinking through realistic solutions, knowing this Bengals team, and you were just talking about this, right? Like we all wanted to sit here and talk about, they should go trade for Calais Campbell, or,
I've seen a lot of
go trade for this, sign Trey Smith, go trade for this corner, go trade for that wide receiver, or whatever it may have been. The truth of the matter is that the Bengals don't do that. So as I think through realistic solutions here, I think unfortunately right now where I'm falling is that Frank Pollock is probably one of the fall guys.
Yep.
I'm still not sure about Lou. My gut tells me that Lou will have to take accountability and probably end up being the fall guy, even though he may or may not deserve it. But at some point, Frank Pollock, Zach Taylor, Dan Pitcher have to figure out a scheme offensively that allows to protect Joe Burrow. And right now, that's been the number one concern that I have. As bad as the defense has been, the offensive line is a bigger concern for me because without Joe Burrow, we all know that this offense also goes with Joe Burrow. So it's got to happen at some point. They've got to figure that out. Joe also has to be better at pre-snap reads. We've talked about that before. I think he's pretty good, but like you can see Derwin James setting up to blitz there before the play happens. So at some point you've got to put in a system to protect your lead asset. And if you're paying him $55 million, you better have him on the field. And right now the Bengals aren't doing enough offensively to set up this team in the offensive line to make sure that Joe Burrow stays on this field.
At the end of that play, he ran to the sideline and finished it standing up. But most of those crazy scramble plays, the fadeaway deep shots, the runs towards the line of scrimmage, getting it away right before a guy's in your face, he is ending up 2 yards beneath the turf. The hits Joe Burrow is taking this year are unbelievable. The amount of times we've seen on the broadcast a deep ball to whoever, because he's using all these receivers, get caught, and then the camera pans back to the 50-yard line, and it's Joe Burrow writhing in pain on the midfield logo. It happened twice on Sunday night. It happened way more than that on Thursday before against the Ravens. It's unbelievable the pressure and punishment that Joe Burrow's taking this year, and that's the conversation that Reed Mouse put in the air on Sunday night's postgame. If you lose one more and you are officially eliminated from the playoffs, do you have the conversation of sitting him down? This O-line is so bad that if he gets hurt and that bleeds into next season, you've now lost 2 years for the price of one. Obviously, we're before that point because it's still mathematically possible for the Bengals to get into the playoffs, and he would never let you sit him down with that on the table. Heck, he's in the facility in the first day of the bye week today. The media went for availability for the coaches, and Jay Morrison tweeted that Joe Burrow's car was in an empty player's lot. He's committed to turning this season around. As long as there's a 1% chance that the Bengals can get in, he's not going to let anyone pull him. I don't know that he'd let anyone pull him afterwards, so this might be a completely useless conversation. But with the punishment he's taking this year, if the Bengals are mathematically eliminated, I don't know if as a fan I can watch Joe take this without a chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you have to have that conversation for sure. I mean, we've heard of teams sitting quarterbacks, Russell Wilson last year, of other quarterbacks that have sat towards the end of the year. mainly to protect potential incentive bonuses more so than anything else. But like, regardless of any incentives, I mean, if the season's over, the last thing you want to do is get Joe hurt in a long term. So, I mean, certainly something that has to have that conversation. I find it really hard to believe that Joe would ever go for it, like you said.
Right.
But I think you had to have the conversation with him at some point about it. And look, I mean, there's one other thing that I want to call out and not really related to this. So kind of, but I'm going to go for a stretch.
Go for it.
The Bengals knew that pass blocking was an issue. They knew that Zach Moss basically earned his value through pass blocking because he certainly wasn't a great runner. He goes down. They go out and get Khalil Herbert. I'm not sure if you saw snap counts yet or not, Jacob, but Khalil Herbert played 4 snaps this game. Not great.
Not at all.
Not great. I mean, look, me and you both are firmly in the Chase Brown boat. Like, I'm not upset that Chase Brown is in there for 83% of the snaps. But also, like, Chase Brown is not a pass blocker. Now, I'll give him credit. He had 11 pass block reps on Sunday and earned a PFF grade of 64.9. So tip your cap to him for that. But, you know, at the same time, like, when you have Chase Brown on the field, the expectation is that he's going to be an explosive potential weapon, not back blocking. So,
exactly,
you know, the more that you have to keep guys back, whether it be Chase Brown, whether it be Drew Sample, whether it be Mike Gesicki or any other tight end, whether you have to bring in jumbo packages with Matt Lee because you can't get a push on the offensive line otherwise, at some point that has to be addressed. And it's a combination of being able to pick up yardage in the run game, protecting your quarterback. But right now, this Bengals offensive line is not athletic enough to run block, and they don't seem to be athletic enough to pass block either, which is a concern. So the amount of times that we've seen offensive linemen end up on their butts, just get pushed over, is climbing, and the Bengals have to fix that. So we'll see.
Absolutely, and it's a broken record because we've been talking about this O-line and its protection since Joe Burrow got here, and his ACL was harvested 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it was. It was like 10 weeks into his rookie season, but that was the start to the Joe Burrow tenure. We've since made it to a Super Bowl, gotten to a point where he's respected as a top 5 quarterback in the league, an MVP candidate, and we're still talking about this team not investing in protecting him. And I guess they have invested in protecting him, and it just hasn't worked out. They've spent more money than almost anybody on that offensive line. Those guys just aren't getting it done right now, and they're going to have to move on and turn the page and eat some dead money and fix it, because you can't keep walking Joe Burrow out there week 1 of every year and just praying that late round picks or guys that weren't good before hopefully become good. It's not a winning formula. You need to commit to getting a real offensive line in here next year. And there's some pieces on this team I believe in. You mentioned it, Karras, second in the NFL according to PFF, both pass blocking and run blocking, trailing just Creed Humphrey. I still believe in Amarius Mims at right tackle. I know he's had some growing pains, but I think he's going to be a great piece for this team for the future. Orlando Brown, obviously we've missed him for a few weeks. There's 3 of the 5 of the Bengals O-line that I still believe in the long term, or at least in the next few years as they continue to age. But the Bengals are going to have to attack those guard positions because Cordell Volson and Alex Kappa aren't doing it, and they're pulling down the rest of the offensive line pretty drastically. But you can't have a key plays segment. We're talking about the 2 biggest key plays of the game, both off the foot of Evan McPherson. 2 misses by Evan McPherson. Both would have given the Bengals the lead. The first one, much to my surprise, has been talked about a lot on Twitter today. Apparently, the sentiment in the stadium was that this kick went in. Fans at the game and refs alike watching on TV said the first kick might have went in. Obviously, he missed the second one. It is what it is. But you can see right in this angle, McPherson points as if he thinks it went in as well. Just an interesting little nugget that popped up after the game, and without the second chance to make it maybe a bigger deal, but hooks it nonetheless, something we've seen happen time and time again this year. He pushes those kicks to the left every single time. He misses one, and he did it twice on Sunday night to cost the Bengals yet another must-win game.
Did you think that went in?
I did not. That's why I was surprised to see that on Twitter, but it was everywhere.
Yeah, I didn't think it went in either. I thought it was pretty clearly wide left, but what do I know? I sent you two things. So I sent you the video of the makes as well.
Yeah.
Just for comparison, and then a popular X account also posted every kick from Evan McPherson this year. I'm not a kicker. I'm not a special teams coach. I don't know. I think part of this is just my brain trying to convince myself that I'm seeing a difference. But I feel like his approach is different on the longer kicks. I feel like it's slower and more deliberate than it is on the shorter ones. The shorter ones, I feel like he attacks quicker.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know why that would be. Maybe it's just a mental thing. Maybe it's he needs more power and so he goes slower. But his shorter kicks here, I feel like he attacks them much quicker. Like that approach feels much quicker to me. You still get a little bit of that kind of tail off of that. So it's not a whole lot different. Like every single kick he kicks gets that little left tail on it.
Every single one.
Every single one. So I don't know what it is. Like there's nothing wrong with the snap. There's nothing wrong with the hold. I just feel like this is an Evan McPherson thing. And whether it's the longer kick specifically, he's just not calculating that drift enough or whatever it may be. I don't know. But Evan McPherson now on this year, 10 of 19 from 50 plus yards for a guy who earned a contract off the back of being clutch from 50 plus yards.
Right.
From 21-22, he was 14 of 16, 87.5%. This year being 52.6%. I mean, he's got to figure it out. I don't know your thoughts on if he ever becomes a cut candidate. I certainly don't think they do it in season.
No, not in season.
But certainly you have to bring somebody in next year to compete with him during camp, just like you did with Ricow this year, right?
No question. You absolutely have to. And I think he is a cut candidate after this year if it continues to go this way. Evan McPherson's currently 39th in field goal percentage, 71.4%. League average from 50 plus this year is 75.4%. That's 4 percentage points better than he is on all kicks. He hasn't just been bad this year. He has been worse than anyone has ever imagined. And to start the year, we blamed the hold against the Ravens, and rightfully so. And we kind of coupled that one with the missed kick earlier in this year and said, okay, maybe it's just growing pains with a new operation, snap, hold, kick. It's going to take some time to get used to it. Now that we're this deep into the season, I'm going to go back to those two misses. There's not an issue on either of these snaps or holds. Both are fine. And McPherson misses the kicks. There's nothing to blame at this point in the season other than Evan McPherson for these shortcomings. There's no other excuses to draw up. The snaps are fine. The holds are fine. And if you're going to be a $14 million kicker, you have to make these kicks. There's no other way to slice it. Sure, some people are saying there's angles or the laces aren't all the way straight. When you pay a guy $14 million, you lose some of those minuscule excuses. McPherson absolutely has to be better. And you're the one that pointed out something that I don't think a lot of people have talked about in this whole thing. Could Zach Taylor telling Evan McPherson that he doesn't believe in him week after week be playing a role in how bad he's been? I'm starting to come around to your side and think so.
I mean, everybody talks about the mental side of the kicking game, especially. Certainly feels as if Evan McPherson doesn't feel like he has the confidence of Zach Taylor. And I think you mentioned it during the live stream on Sunday, but there was a shot late in the game where the Bengals had the ball and I think needed a field goal to take the lead or whatever it was. And they showed Evan McPherson on the sidelines and he's just standing there with a cap on, holding his shoulder pads. Now, Jacob, I had season tickets for the Cincinnati Bengals from the time I was born until I was like 25 years old. I went away after college and did work. My seats at Paul Brown were the front row on the 15-yard line on the Bengals sideline. I literally was right next to the kicker's net all year, every year. And I can tell you that every kicker, if we had the ball, there was one of two people kicking into that net. It was the punter or it was the kicker. But if it was the punter, the kicker was right there too, working on approach or whatever it may be. He was working. He was very rarely, if the Bengals had the ball, standing there doing nothing. So for Evan McPherson to be standing there doing nothing after missing 2 50-plus yard kicks, I needed to know about what his expectations were for that game. He did not expect the game to kick another field goal. Now, whether or not he ever would have, I don't know. Maybe he would have, maybe he wouldn't have. But the truth of the matter is that mentally he was not ready to go in that game and kick another field goal if he needed to.
No question about that. And that's certainly a problem that goes back to the coaching staff, because you have to relay confidence to your guys. You can't be tearing down your kicker like that. And not that he's saying anything directly to him, talking negatively, but to continue to not utilize your kicker after some early season woes. Maybe this is when you get to week 11 and he can't hit a 50-yarder because he doesn't think he can. Not warming up on the sideline is absolutely ridiculous to me, whether you're going to kick or not. If your coach doesn't have faith in you, you should be displaying even extra faith in yourself to try to get the team to rally around you. You just missed 2 kicks. I wouldn't be anywhere but the net, regardless of if we had the ball or not. If you miss back-to-back game-winning, I know the first one was with like 7 minutes left, but back-to-back game-winning kicks or lead-getting kicks, I would still be at the net in SoFi probably right now. It's ridiculous that he just, I don't know what it is. And then you see the clip after the game, and I don't know if you saw this, but it drove me up a wall at about 1:15 in the morning on Sunday night. Evan McPherson in the background of the post-game interview, just dapping up Chargers players, just having a good time, smiling and yucking it up. Brother, we're 4-7 partially because of you. And you don't seem to care. The clip went viral this morning of Joe Burrow walking off the field looking like someone just shot his dog. And Evan McPherson's just dapping up the special teamers on the Los Angeles Chargers. This goes back to what we talked about earlier in the show, the disconnect in the locker room, the lack of connection in the theme being given across in the post-game interviews. You're seeing it just in these clips in-game on the sideline and post-game. These guys aren't all on the same page, and I don't know whose fault that is. I put a lot of it on coaching staff, but I also put a lot of it on who are supposed to be the leaders of this team. You're supposed to have leaders on all 3 sides of the football, and it doesn't seem like any of them are pulling their weight this season because none of the 3 sides have been consistent enough for me to give them overall great grades. Everyone has struggled at some point this year, to no fault of anyone else. Unforced errors on all 3 sides of the football this year, and I know a lot of people want to put that on Taylor and the coordinators, but I think some of that has to fall on the captains and the people that are supposed to be the leaders of this team. That's exactly what we saw on Sunday night, and it was a little bit different direction than what we've seen most of the times this year. The Bengals played a tale of 2 halves yet again. This time, they just flipped it and got back in the game after playing one of the worst first halves we've seen all year. Going into halftime down, the Bengals hadn't trailed in the first half of the 6 games leading up to this one. And they had lost how many of them? Just ridiculous that this team can't string together 2 halves. You take one of those first halves where you had the lead against the Ravens, and you pair it with the second half against the Chargers, you got the best team in football. But this team cannot come together and play a complete game. And that's the thing that's going to bite them at the end of this season, and maybe the end of the season was on Sunday night because of it.
I tweeted, Mike Petraglia tweeted out a video from the locker room after that first Ravens game on October 6th when Evan McPherson missed that overtime field goal. Yep. And it's an interview with Evan McPherson, and he's like smiling and laughing and like, yeah, he's taking accountability and says, I got to make it and all those things. But like, he doesn't look upset about it. And like, part of me is like, yeah, I want a kicker who forgets about misses and goes out there and makes the next one. But at the same time, you just lost a game to a division rival because you missed your kick in overtime, and you're there smiling in the locker room. And I retweeted it and shared it too. And like my literal tweet is, why is Evan so happy? Like I don't get it. I mean, he's giggling and laughing. I'm watching this right now without sound, and I'm getting disturbed at his facial expressions because he doesn't seem to care about it. And then you have this exact same thing that happened on Sunday, where after the game, he's out there dapping players up. He doesn't really seem overly disappointed. And yet when you watch everybody else going into the locker room, they've all got their heads down. They're all mad. They're all upset about it, but not Evan McPherson, not the guy who maybe cost the team the game by missing 2 field goals, not the guy, who has one job, literally one job the entire game, and that's to kick a ball through up the uprights and can't get it done. This guy's under contract for 3 more years, and I realize that you've got a lot invested into him. You gave him that $5 million signing bonus, but if you go into 2025 and you don't bring in competition for training camp, we're going to have an issue. Like, absolutely. You cannot go in without any sort of competition, and real competition at that. Yeah. Not some undrafted kicker from a MAC school that you've never heard of, or, anything like that. I mean, a legitimate veteran kicker. Bring them in, compete with them, and let's see if Evan McPherson's ready mentally to actually be the kicker for this Cincinnati Bengals team.
On Spotrac, which is the website used for monitoring a lot of NFL contracts, it says Evan McPherson, there's a potential out for the Cincinnati Bengals to cut after this season for 1 year at $6 million, $3.75 million dead cap. So there is a route, if this continues in this direction, for the Bengals to at least salvage some of that contract and move on from McPherson after this year. That would be a crazy turnaround from a guy who, in my opinion, just anecdotally, probably the third most popular jersey at Paycor Stadium on a Sunday. It's Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Evan McPherson. We're the team in the league with probably the most popular kicker amongst their fan base because of what he did in that Super Bowl run in 2021. And now we're talking about cutting him just a matter of months after a record-breaking extension. Craig, I pulled over on the side of the highway to do a reaction video to an Evan McPherson extension because we were so excited about locking him down. It was the first edition of Craig and I's Chatterbox Bengals. We said this is the start to a great offseason. We're going to get Jamar Chase locked down. We're going to get Trey Hendrickson figured out, and we're going to go win a Super Bowl. Boy, oh boy, has it gone the other direction since then. Just a crazy turn of events.
I remember starting that video and teasing that the Bengals signed a player to a big contract, and it wasn't T. Higgins, unfortunately, or Jamar Chase, unfortunately, but it was Evan McPherson, and we were happy. We were happy, stoked. Jacob. Oh man,
just a crazy turn of events this year.
How quickly the turntables turn.
That's right, and it's happened with so many guys this year. It's not just McPherson. The level of excitement going into this season was so high, and it's just been torn down since then. We went out of order a little bit. Obviously, we've already handled the kicking question, so we'll move into the last point. Craig, I know you said it, but mathematically you're wrong. Is there a chance? I want you to say something other than just a plain no.
You want me to say something other than a plain no?
What if I help you out first? No,
I don't. I mean, you can say whatever you want.
There's a path.
I don't care about a path, Jacob. I don't care about a path. I'm tired of paths. We talked all offseason about the path to a Super Bowl. We talked at the trade deadline about the path to getting back to the playoffs. We talked the last 2 weeks about the path to getting back. And guess what? The Bengals went out and they lost 34-27 to the Chargers, and then they lost 35-34 to the Ravens. I'm done talking about paths. After the Ravens game, we talked about it. We said, the path is there.
Yeah.
They play the Giants. They play the Browns. The Eagles are struggling at the time. The Raiders are an easy win. And then they've got 2 big games with the Ravens and Chargers and Steelers. Well, guess what? The Steelers just beat the Ravens because the Steelers have a phenomenal defense. Yeah. I'm still not sold on Russell Wilson, but they have a phenomenal defense. I think the way that Russell Wilson and George Pickens throw the ball together, they're going to pick Cam Taylor-Britt apart again, and we're going to have yet another issue there where Russell Wilson is going to look like an NFL quarterback, even when we all know he's not, whether you want to believe it or not. The Cowboys, the Cowboys are a mess, and yet the Bengals still might find a way to lose to the Cowboys.
You got to at least give me these next 3.
The next three, you want me to give you the Steelers, Cowboys, and Titans?
No.
You want the Cowboys, Titans, and Browns.
Yeah, I'm saying if you're going to take the Steelers off my plate, you got to at least give me the next three.
Listen, anything can happen in Springfield, Illinois, and the Bengals are playing as the Simpsons that night, so who knows what's going to happen. The Titans, look, they're a mess too. I get it. The Browns are a mess. But realistically, even if they get all three of those, they're going to be lucky to finish the season 3-3 because they have the Broncos, who showed yet again that their defense is really good and offensively they're not as bad as you think. And then the Steelers again, which again, that defense is so good. They just beat the Ravens. They didn't score a single touchdown. Right. They won the game 18-14 because of 6 field goals. So look, I said it at the top of the show. I'll say it again now. The 2024 Cincinnati Bengals season is done.
I'm not joining you. I'm not joining you. Don't let us beat the Steelers. Don't let us beat the Steelers, Craig. You come out of the bye, which Zach Taylor's teams are great out of a bye. You come out of the bye, you take care of the Pittsburgh Steelers in Paycor. Got to win some games at home, right? So maybe we'll get one here. Win the next 3 games against bad teams. Boom, 4 wins. You're back above 500. That's 8-7. You got 2 games left. Broncos, give me Joe Burrow over Bo Nix. I'll just do that simple math and then count that as a win. And then week 18, the Steelers have already won the division. They're resting their starters. Bengals beat Justin Fields. Boom, playoffs. You like that one, Craig?
Love it. Love it.
Reed got with me here. Reed got back in with me. Maybe I need him for the energy, Craig. You can't be out like this. Come on. We need good vibes.
Why not? Why can't I be out like this?
If they were bad enough to lose out and pick in the top 10, I'd be rooting for it. But they're too good to lose to the Browns, Cowboys, and Titans that they'd be picking 17 or 18. So I might as well try to talk myself into it.
Yeah, I mean, talk yourself into it. Go for it. Please do. I mean,
that's fair.
We need some sort of optimism at this point, right? Let's give you some optimism. I don't
think these are
the Bengals. No, come on. You just said it. The Bengals have been superb coming out of their bye week. They've won their last 3 games coming out of bye weeks. Two of them ended up kind of cementing their push to the playoffs. So, yeah, sure. Maybe that'll happen.
There we go, Craig. Thank you.
But
thank you. Throw me a bone.
Yeah, sure. They win out of the bye week. They beat the Steelers, and then they somehow magically lose to the Cowboys. Then what?
No, you're right.
This is what this Bengals team has done.
Yeah.
They get you excited. Yeah. They make you think, oh my God, look at that. We just beat the Giants on national television. Oh, we beat the Browns in Cleveland. We never win in Cleveland. We're all the way back. This team's so for real. And then they turn around and they get their absolute stomped out of them by the Eagles. Yeah, they beat the Raiders, but then they blow it against the Ravens. They blow it against the Chargers. I'm tired of getting my hopes up. Listen,
that's fair.
Jacob,
that's fair.
On Sunday, I'm in San Diego. I try to get my wife to go to the game, right? She won't go to the game with me. That's fine. Let's go. We'll go find a sports bar in San Diego. We'll watch the game. Guess what? Halftime rolls around. I'm out of there. I'm ready to spend the entire game there watching the game. They've got a Pizookie on the menu I'm pumped for in the second half. And I just can't do it. Couldn't do it. I had to get out of there. I was embarrassed to be wearing my Joe Burrow jersey in the San Diego sports bar. Had to get out. By the time we got home, the Bengals had scored 14. They were only down by 7 at that point. I'm all the way back in.
Yeah.
And then what happens? They blow it again, just like they've done it multiple times. They rip your heart out. And I refuse. This is like high school when I dated the same girl like 18 different times for a total of 3 months over the span of 8 years. Like, just keep getting your heart stomped on and over again. But you just keep going back. Reed loved the girlfriend analogy after the game on Sunday. I'm bringing it back. You date the same girl over and over in high school because you think this time it'll be different. It won't be different. It's the same old Bengals. They let you down time and time again, and I'm done getting my heart stepped on, Jacob. I'm lowering my expectations for this year. We're done. Stay healthy. Get through the season with Joe Burrow healthy.
That's the biggest thing.
And I'll be happy.
Protect yourself. Protect yourself. I'm ready to get hurt again. And maybe 2 or 3 more times this season. So we're locked in.
You're still young. You haven't
That's
learned.
right. I'm still young. I got a lot of miles left on these tires. I might as well wear them down a little bit this season. But we're certainly not done here at Chatterbox Bengals. We got a long season left. And Thursday night, we're going to be live yet again at Champions on the West Side off Work Road. Champions Grill with an E. Work Road with an E. On the West Side, me, Elliot Rearing, Casey McCollister, maybe Reed Mouse, only time will tell. Be there Thursday night at 7 p.m. leading up to the Thursday night football game, Browns-Steelers, AFC North matchup. We can all root against them both together. That'll be a grand old time. So make your way over out to Work Road, Champions on Thursday night, and we'll have a great time together. But for tonight's edition of Chatterbox Bengals, I tried my hardest to get Craig back in, but I don't think it's going to happen this season. Maybe next year. But for tonight, thanks everyone for watching. This has been Chatterbox Bengals. I'll give you a hooday because they hurt a little bit more now than normal.